Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are here to celebrate the third non-consecutive opening weekend of the XFL.
That's correct. I spent the entire weekend either watching live XFL, watching replays of the games this past weekend, watching classic games from 2000. I am XFL'd out. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you.
I was going to say, what are you telling me right now? Okay.
That's not true. I saw, what's his name? Dallas is that four-string quarterback they have. What's his name?
Ben DiNucci.
DiNucci
lost last night to my
fumble on the 1 yard line. I watched two plays in that game. I was flipping around, I think, because the NBA All-Star game was beyond brutally bad. And I flipped over and I saw there's 20 seconds left. This might be sort of interesting. And he just sort of fumbled. I'm like, all right, that's it for my XFL watching this year.
No, I'll say this much. The quality of play is not quite there across all teams, but the extra point situation they have of the 1 point, 2 point, 3 points is cool. And in that game, not that game, the St. Louis game, the Sunday afternoon game, all of those rule changes happened in the last couple minutes to help St. Louis.
I saw that.
That's cool as hell. I'm not gonna lie.
And also do you like instead of the onside kick, the 4th and 15 play? But that was kind of interesting.
That was cool, and it worked.
Can I ask you an important question though, Grump?
Yes.
Have you ever, you've been a Giant fan now basically your whole life. So we're talking going back into the 90s, right?
80s. 87.
To the 80s. Okay. How the hell old are you?
35.
Okay. So I was going to say some basic.
So I was born 10 months too late for the first Super Bowl.
Okay. Have you ever been as excited sitting in Giant Stadium, MetLife Stadium, an away game, as some of the fans were at the end of that first XFL game?
So, all right, I'm going to give you the full... I wasn't really planning on talking about this for very long, but full disclosure is I went to the bar last night to kind of half-ass watch that game, but also the Devils were on. So I figured if it sucks, win-win, right? I will say unequivocally that the NBA All-Star game was the worst thing that was on TV Sunday night.
Oh, it was awful.
The XFL game was objectively more interesting.
Right. I'm talking about fans.
So here's the thing. We noticed that those guys were being insane. And we were like, I can't believe I couldn't believe that they even had a night game. Who's going to go to a game at night outside in Maryland?
In D.C.?
In February. And it was so we're like, what the hell is going on? And then there was this whole thing with throwing lemons on the field where, I guess security took away their beer cup tower. So they got mad and they found some plethora of lemons with some, I guess was supplies for some drink at concessions. And the fans took them and were throwing them on the field. And so through this whole thing, I'm like, what is happening with these lemons? I'm looking stuff up. Allegedly, the DC Defenders XFL fan base is notorious for being the more wild one. I guess your Bills Mafia of the XFL.
Or they're just paid plants.
Or they're just paid plants, but that's so to answer your question, I was wondering the exact same thing, and when I looked into it, that was what I found.
Yeah. That could be a backstory. Because I know back in the day, Casey Kasem used to do his top 40 countdown, and rap artists would give complete bullshit biographies that are Humpty Hump from Digital Underground is a made-up character, and they would send a story to Casey Kasem about his backstory, and he'd read it on the air Humpty Hump's voice got damaged in a restaurant accident in Tampa. No, that's all bullshit. That's a story. So what you might have read might have been a plant that was put in Wikipedia or something too. So, but I just watched this. I'm like, I've been to 3 Super Bowls. We've been to conference championship games. Me and you have traveled. Been really excited in big games. I've never been as excited as these knuckleheads were.
I don't think it was that insane.
They were pretty geeked.
They were pretty into it though. And I can tell you that having been in the crowd at a Maury show, I can tell you for sure that there are paid plants at those things. There are actual employees in the crowd to stir things up in case the actual crowd is not into it.
I went to the first ever NYCFC soccer match when it was in Orlando in 2017. And, I was into it. It was exciting, but it was just like, okay, this is my first game ever with this. I'm not all of a sudden, I'm not getting a tattoo of the team on my arm and acting like sweating balls about the outcome of the game. Some of these people were. I thought it was pretty funny. So that's our XFL moment for you.
Yeah. Our Giants moment, though, real legitimate great news. Mike Kafka, Wink Martindale, both had head coaching interests, Arizona, Indianapolis, and both of those teams went the Philadelphia Eagles direction. Indianapolis going for Shane Steichen and Arizona going for Jonathan Gannon. Both of those guys will be returning. Shea Tierney had interest from Tampa Bay as an offensive coordinator. I have to assume that whole franchise is in teardown mode.
If they're not, they should be.
They certainly should be. He had some OC interest there. He will be returning. The only coaching staff member thus far that has left the team is running back coach DeAndre Smith went to the Colts to join Shane Steichen. I am not concerned at all with replacing a running backs coach.
You know something? The running back is more important than the running back coach.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah. But you know something? We kind of figured that both guys would be back. We were a little concerned about Wink, but we both assumed that Kafka was coming back for this coaching cycle. And I think that is, enormously important for this team, for this have as many offensive coordinators and head coaches they've had in the last 5, 6, 7 years. To have a second year continuity with the coaching staff is going to pay so many dividends, no matter who the quarterback and the running back will be. And we'll talk about that shortly, but huge thing for this team going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it can be understated. I'm reserved to understanding that both of these guys will not be here either in a year or 2 years. I really do think that both of them will be gone very soon. But I didn't think that we were ready yet to move on. And honestly, the Wink thing is a pain in the ass because there's not too many Wink Martindales out there. Forget even just how good he is. I just mean that style of defense demands a certain style of roster building. Mm-hmm. And to switch out of that to some other kind of defense, this team is just not ready to have to deal with that kind of roster wheeling and dealing right now. They are only just now getting in a real retool mode.
We're wheeling right now. We don't have time to wheel and deal.
That's correct. Yeah. And so that was more my concern with Wink leaving. I don't want Wink to leave because I like him, but also I think that sets us back like a whole ass year to have to retool that. I mean, if Mike Kafka goes, this is still Brian Dable's offense. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about having to retool. I mean, we might take a step back with continuity, getting a new offensive coordinator, getting some terminology changed, but I wasn't worried about it from like a cap standpoint or a draft standpoint. So,
and let's be honest, this is not the greatest show on turf either. I mean, it's an offense that obviously needs pieces, but was not a great offense. But you want to see building. You want this training camp to have as less chaos as possible. The install of what this offense will be was done last year. Now you can kind of go in. Everybody, knows. When you go into the off-season OTAs. Who's speaking, the language being spoken, the drills, the techniques, the cadence. Just having one of those will make things a lot smoother going into training camp and the beginning of the season. So it's just again, that doesn't solidify us to be a Super Bowl contender, but it just makes the transition as roster building and building this team go just a little smoother.
And on a similar vein, I think it's cool that Shea Tierney is coming back. I didn't really think Shea Tierney was going to go anywhere, but I don't attribute all of Daniel Jones's improvements last year to Shea Tierney fixing him. I think a lot of it just simply has to do with a better offense. I think it has to do with better personnel in front of him. He certainly was not under the same kind of pressure he was the year before. Although, I mean, the offensive line, we agree, is still not very good. It was leaps and bounds better than what it was last year.
And same with the wide receiving core. Again, we said that we need a wide receiver one. We need this. We need that. We need Wandell back and everything. Still, we ended the season with NFL receivers. We didn't have guys coming off the street like we did the end of 2021.
You think so?
Oh, I think the receivers at the end of this season were far better than the end of last year.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, wasn't that still like David Sills and, just guys didn't even really just, I would go back and look at that final list of guys. I wonder how many of them are even in the league anymore.
Yeah, well, David Sills was just re-signed. So there's that. I don't know. Anyway, the point is that they have gotten their coaches back. The most important guys are back. This offseason's capital, Joe Schoen will have some movement here. Right now, they are $41 million under the cap. They're going to need about $10 million or so for the draft class. So you can scratch $10 million off. You can add about $2.5 million because when it comes time for cap, you only need the top 51 contracts to be under. So that helps. So you're looking at about $34 million in cap space. And that's before doing anything.
I was going to say, does that include some of the expected cuts? Okay, good.
No, that's just where we're at right now, $34 million. Cutting Kenny Golladay, you can scratch in $7 million more. If you want to cut Leonard Williams, that's $12 million more, although I think a restructure is probably more likely. Again, we'll get to these guys more specifically as we go through positions or whatever. Cutting Adoree is another one that people talk about. That's $9 million you can add. Again, restructure I think is more likely. So there's money here. There's close to $50 million, $45 million, something around there to be spent this year.
And remember, at this time last year, we were about to do an exercise of how can we cut $30 million. Remember that?
Oh,
that
dude, I spent
just 12
hours trying to do prep for that episode.
Yeah. I'm still sore from the gymnastics we had to do just to get to that number.
My calculator, the plus button is busted. It's the best I got. They also have 11 draft picks. They have 3 inside the top 100. The 4th is 101, so that's pretty good. That means 2 third-round picks. They also have 2 sixth-round picks, and they have 3 seventh-round picks. Of course, you could get 3 guys in the 7th round. I think it's more likely you package them up. Maybe you get yourself another 5th-round pick, something like that, something a little bit more meaningful. But we'll see, because I know people are like, oh, 7th round pick is garbage, whatever. There are running backs in the 7th round, man. Ahmad Bradshaw was a 7th round pick. Isaiah Pacheco, Super Bowl hero, was a 7th round draft pick.
I was just about to say, wasn't Pacheco a 7th round pick?
Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant.
Wasn't Terrell Davis a 7th round pick with the Broncos?
Was that a 7-round draft format at that time?
He was either 6th or 7th round. I'm going to the Google machine to look.
No. That's not my question. My question is, was it a 7-round draft at that time, or was it many more rounds at that time?
I'm doing some quick searching as we talk right now. Let's see. First of all, here's a fun fact. He is 13 days younger than me. Makes me feel real old.
Use your Google pay.
He was a 6th round pick in a year where there was, 7 rounds.
Okay, then there you go. Speaking of late round picks, I'm pretty sure Isaiah Hodgins was either a 5th or a 6th round pick. He is an exclusive rights free agent with the Giants, so he signed a 1-year deal worth something around $800,000 because that is what the minimum is, and that's what exclusive rights free agents command.
And for his production, that seems like a real value signing.
Dude, are you kidding me? That's it. I think that puts him in consideration where if he is having an improved 2023 over 2022, you might be looking at like a mid-year extension for him.
Yeah,
maybe. I'm just saying don't rule it out. I think I fully understand what Isaiah Hodgins is and isn't. But that was part of a flurry of reserves, or that was a move that was made during a flurry of reserves future contracts, most notably to guys like Corey Cunningham, Devery Hamilton, that's valuable depth at tackle, Andre Miller, the tight end from Maine, or wide receiver from Maine, they were converting to tight end. They were high on in preseason before he broke a bone. David Sills, Zion Gilbert, who got playing time, Trenton Thompson, and Jashawn Corbin. Other guys as well, but those are probably the most important names. Even that's a bit of a stretch. Okay. So, for this offseason preview, there is probably 2 conversations that are dominating your Twitter timeline. And it's time for us to weigh in. So let's start
Yeah.
with the Daniel Jones question. Currently at quarterback, the Giants have only one person signed, and that is Tyrod Taylor. As far as I know, Davis Webb is a free agent, and so is Daniel Jones. He is now, as of today, Monday, I saw a report from the Post, which I don't know how much I believe, that he is seeking $45 million annually. And cue Twitter's response. I want to hear Cranky fans' response. Tell me what you think about Daniel Jones, how much we need him, what the money is. I want to hear your thoughts.
It's very simple for me. If you think he's your guy, the guy that you want to be on this team for the next X amount of years, you sign him. And if it's $5 million over what you think the market is or something, you get him. It's pure and simple. I mean, getting your quarterback is one of the hardest things you can do in professional sports. He's been in the building now for a year. I think he completely turned around his perception in the building from day one when Dable and coaching staff got here to where he is right now. I think, his brain, his his even keelness, I think are very, very important things that if you want to survive in this New York market. I mean, look what the Jets with Zach Wilson, a guy who just couldn't handle the pressure of playing here, just saying stupid things, not being able to play under pressure. Um, you have to make a projection based upon, once this gets a better room of wide receivers, maybe a better offensive line, maybe a better tight end also. But to me, if he's your guy and you make that decision, he's your guy, you pay. And maybe you overpay a little bit. But if he becomes the guy you want him to be, he'll be underpaid in a couple of years. So you know, I think you go for it. And I think you sign him if you think he's your guy.
Do you think he's your guy?
Well, it's not as simple as just, do I think he's my guy? It always comes down to, well, what's the alternative? The problem the Giants have is they're too good right now to just get the easiest way and the cheapest way to get your guy, and that's through the draft. Oh, sure. I mean, it's a possibility you can get with the 25th pick your guy, but the odds are a lot more longer. Possibly you can get him in the second or third round, but the odds are even more longer. And for a team that, what are the Giants? Are the Giants a team that's still in the middle of a rebuild? Are they a team that made the playoffs and you expect to take the next step next year? Well, if you're saying goodbye to Daniel Jones and you're drafting a rookie, you are probably taking a step back. And you're not going to, potentially be as good as you were this year. If you want to get another quarterback in the free agent market, there's other names out there. It's going to probably cost you close to the same because I don't think Daniel Jones' perceived market value is going to be that much lower than a lot of these other guys that are out there that if you want to get and have them worth a shit. I mean, it's something, it's one of these things like people are trying to, you know, oh, he's worth too much, but they really want him. But like, if you're going to replace and you want somebody better than him, you're going to pay more. So I honestly, they're in a bit of a tough spot, I think, but I think you have to pay. And I think I've seen enough out of him with the limited tools that you structure it in a way. I think the structuring of the contract is going to make it play an important part in this too. It's not just the dollar amount and the years amount. How do they structure it? I think you can work something out in negotiations where it's advantageous for both sides. I think you do it.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna go right out and say, first of all, I agree with a lot of what you said. I'm gonna go right out and say that he is my guy. I think that probably surprises very few people who listen to the show or whatever. That doesn't mean that I'm gonna make endless excuses for him or whatever. My opinion actually doesn't really matter. But I think the thing is here. I don't know that he's going to be worth $45 million, but I think it's really a lot less crazy than people think to even ask that. I think he's probably going to end up landing somewhere around between 38 and 42 million probably annually. But here's the thing to keep in mind. I don't think people really truly understand what the quarterback market is right now, and that's not really their fault. And that's not me calling people stupid, because A, the cap is not easy to understand or figure out, and B, the COVID effect on what happened to the cap the last few years is sort of unprecedented from the modern standpoint. I mean, sure. I can't remember the last time the cap went down.
I mean, NFL rights every year go up and up and up. They don't go down.
Up. Exactly. So what you have are people looking at how much Daniel Jones will cost in 2023 versus, say, Aaron Rodgers in 2023. And Aaron Rodgers is going to make $31 million. Well, the thing is, people like Aaron Rodgers signed contracts around the time of that COVID situation. And so if you look at his contract, by 2025, it's $60 million. So the idea that Daniel Jones will be playing for $38 million in 2025, theoretically, does that really, that's a bargain at that point. Here's some other contracts. Josh Allen, $40 million, will be $50 million by 2025. Mahomes, $45 million. Dak is already at $50 million. Deshaun Watson is at $54 million every single year. Deshaun Watson, who...
Right.
His future
in the league. Should be in the league.
Yeah, exactly. Hurts is seeking near $50 million. He'll probably end up getting more than that. Cousins, Tannehill, $36 million. Kyler Murray will get $52 million in 2024.
And think about guys like Trevor Lawrence who are going to get paid pretty soon. I mean, he's starting year 3 next year. You know,
but that's the thing, is that the Trevor Lawrence market is going to be affected by what those contracts are at that time. And at that will be in like 1 year, these guys will be seeking 4 or 5 year deals worth something like $50 to $60 million. Think about it. Russell Wilson will be over $50 million from 2025 on. Matt Stafford, over $50 million from 2024 and beyond. Matt Stafford. Who would you rather have? 26-year-old Daniel Jones or 7 shoulder surgeries Matt Stafford, who won 1 Super Bowl with a great head coach and a loaded team going all in?
Right.
I mean, that's not taking anything from Matt Stafford. I'm just saying, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding from a lot of Giants fans of what the QB market is and isn't. And quite frankly, there are a couple teams out there looking for quarterbacks this year. Don't tell me you think the Colts or the Jets don't want Daniel Jones. Do you think they don't want him? Seriously.
No. My question would be, how many teams out there that are quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl would want Daniel Jones, as opposed to, a Jets? Well, I guess the Jets, you could maybe put those possibly in that category. I mean, I think the Jets think they are a quarterback away from being a very, very serious contender.
I think they think that quarterback was probably... I don't know what they think. I'm sorry. I don't pay enough attention to the Jets to know what they think. I assume they think that quarterback is in the top 3 reasons why they were not successful this year.
And that's why I think they're going to make the jump for an Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I mean, there's a reason those names were connected outside of LaFleur.
Is they going to look with a team like the Jets then, where they going to look at, is Daniel Jones that guy they think their window's now? Do they think Daniel Jones is that quarterback who's going to come in and be the guy in the window right now?
And by now, I mean, we're talking about a 4 to 5 year contract. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, like, and I'm not trying to say that just because other teams want a guy you have, that's a reason to re-sign him. Otherwise, I mean, you'd be saddled with Landon Collins' massive contract or whatever.
Or you have Ben McAdoo as your head coach.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, or you're re-signing a Steve Smith with a busted knee or whatever. Like, that's not a reason to re-sign a guy. But it's quarterback. It's the most important position in sports. And also, there is a lot of reasons to want him back outside of the market. So, I don't know. To me, I think that I try to make this work on a 3-4 year deal. Obviously, the money is important. I just think that maybe Giants fans hear numbers and think they understand them and maybe don't. And also, not for nothing, annual numbers are just averages. There are ways to work out a contract so that Daniel Jones gets the figures he wants. That does not necessarily affect the cap in 2023 and maybe affects the cap more in 2024 or something like that.
And I like to see that Venn diagram of Giant fans or football fans or just the public who thinks That's a lot for Daniel Jones, and that's a lot, period. Because I think you hear a lot of people say, nobody is worth that. Well, yes, they are. I mean, does it mean somebody who throws the football around should be getting $50 million where the guy who works in the hospital makes $20 an hour? No, but that's not what this argument ever has been. I think some people just hear these numbers that sound so unworldly and they just like, that's ridiculous. But everything has to be put into
They are unworldly, but just understand that we're talking about billion-dollar enterprises. These are numbers you and I can't fathom.
Yeah, you can't look at it as what you get paid. It's kind of like you are a natural resource. You are a computer. You are a 747. You are an asset that makes it, right, $1 million business in a multi-billion-dollar industry run.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a normie point of view, I think, but whatever. I mean, that's obviously going to be the big focal point of the entire offseason is Daniel Jones, right? I'm going to add this in there. We talked already about coaches, and we talked already about quarterbacks. There was a time that I think started somewhere around, I'm not really sure when it really started, but it seemed to take shape around that 2004 NFL draft where all the quarterbacks came out, but it's after Tom Brady's emergence and whatever, right? And I think there became this unspoken blueprint of how you win at football at that time, and it was get the big dick quarterback. That's step number one. You're not winning without that guy. That doesn't happen anymore. Then once you got him, you get him a left tackle to keep him alive, and you get him a Randy Moss. So you get yourself this Tyron Smith, this Tom Brady, this Randy Moss, and that's how you score points in the NFL, and that's how you win games. And you run the ball, and then you play action, and you hit them deep. And I think at one time that was the blueprint everybody was trying to do. And so the name of the game was winning the quarterback sweepstakes. And that was what you put all your beans towards. That's why you tank seasons for Andrew Luck, etc., right? And I think the game has changed from finding this unicorn, a 6'4" quarterback that could move a little bit in the pocket, had the brain of a head coach and the arm of I don't know, Viking, whatever. You get my point. You find these unicorns like an Eli Manning, a Tom Brady. You find these unicorns like Tyron Smith, where you just make them in a left tackle factory, and they're just the right random measurements and size and want to and whatever. And you do the same thing at wide receiver. You get a 6'4" wide receiver like Calvin Johnson, and you realize that this shit is just impossible. Like who can land all of these unicorns at once? They're unicorns for a reason. The game seems to have changed to get yourself the guy who doesn't count against the cap that you can pay into forever. You get yourself the brilliant offensive head coach that can make things happen with cheaper products on the field. And I think that's the game now. And part of that game is getting a QB that can move. Daniel Jones moves really well. And in the last year, he has accompanied that movement into his passing game. And we saw it even better down the stretch, where we saw him stretching plays outside of the pocket, manipulating the secondary, and throwing to wide open receivers in the end zone. Now, that seems like basic shit, but that basic mastery that he has just kind of put together over the next couple of years, he's going to be deadly wherever he plays.
I'm not going to compare the two for his equal skill set, but that was what made like Aaron Rodgers so dangerous. Not the fact that he has such a great arm and he was so smart and everything, but the fact that he can move around the pocket so well and get out of situations, not by being a scrambler, but just being a great mover. And that's what kind of Daniel Jones feels like to me. It's a great mover.
Yeah. And I would say he's not really necessarily a great scrambler. I think he's good at reading when running is maybe his best option. And I clearly a great designed runner. We know that. But you're right. Like Aaron Rodgers was the first of those quarterbacks that I can think of, unless you want to count Mike Vick, which I'm not sure I want to do.
He's a running quarterback who is a unicorn because he had that arm. But
right. I agree with you. Yeah. But I think Aaron Rodgers was the first one of those quarterbacks that could really be dangerous with his legs. You're right.
Well, if you go, I guess a little further back, maybe Steve Young, but he might be.
Yeah, Steve Young and Brett Favre, they could move, but did Steve Young really have the arm? He was accurate and stuff, but like,
yeah,
I don't know if he really had the big.
He's a lefty too, so he looked weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm a lefty.
But I think you're a lefty.
In some things.
Okay. Yeah, I think I actually knew that.
Yeah.
I think
those things. You relax everybody.
I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't really have anything else to add to the quarterback conversation right now. Do you?
Yeah. I mean, you have to factor everything into a situation. Again, replacement value, replacement cost, replacement time. Does he fit what you're trying to do? Is he a fit in the building? And I think the answer is, he's your guy. You get him, and then you work around it. I mean, ideally, you'd like to have somebody in a rookie, a great young guy in a rookie deal, so you can pay for other stuff. But this is where we are right now, and I think you get him. I think you keep him.
Switching to the other side of that coin, the other side of that dime is Saquon Barkley and the running back question. So right now, the Giants have 2 running backs under contract for 2023, and that is Gary Brightwell, and they just re-signed Jashawn Corbin to a futures contract. Barkley and Breida are free agents. I think it's reported that Barkley is seeking a Christian McCaffrey type contract. I think he knows he's going to get less than that. I think we're looking at something around $12 million a year. And take it away, Cranky.
I am not a guy, if you know me at all, whether it's the Giants or the Knicks or any of my teams, I am not an idol worshiper. I love players on my team, but I don't have, I'm not 9 years old. I have a poster of guys like Carmelo Anthony or Saquon Barkley in my bedroom. To me, you don't keep them just because you love the guy. And that $12 million number, I'm looking at a list right here of this since 2009, the base salary of running backs who've won the Super Bowl. 460,000, 320,000, 1.5, 2 million, 2.5, 730, 585, 760, 900, 480,000, 1.05, 2 million, and 1.1. He is a really good running back. I don't think he is so elite and so great to justify that cost when this team still has a lot of other needs. And if you ask me, where am I spending my dollar on a quarterback or a running back? 10 times out of 10, I'm going to say quarterback. So to me, I'm not paying that money for Saquon Barkley. I am moving on. It's not because I don't like him. It has nothing even to do with his durability. I just, for what this roster, the construction of this roster still needs to be, and the value you're getting, I think you're best suited, dipping back, getting a running back in the draft, getting somebody good. As this offensive line gets better, as Daniel Jones continues to get better, as better weapons around him, you plug somebody else in. This is my feeling.
I think I'm in a take it or leave it situation. I think if it comes down to a Jones or Barkley situation, it's not even close. I'm going Jones. I'm going quarterback for starters. But also, I know people are like, oh, Jones has like an injury history, but like we know Daniel Jones plays hurt. So the times he missed games, he was really, really hurt. Mm-hmm. So to me, they have like similar injury histories. I don't know. I think if you can bring them both back, I think that they complement each other well. I think Saquon Barkley benefits from a quarterback that can run as well as someone like Daniel Jones or Jalen Hurts or something like that. I think that Daniel Jones benefits from someone that can run in that scat back kind of way. Especially because, I mean, you look at the RPO, and you have to, as a tackler, always be worried with Saquon Barkley of completely stopping in his tracks, turning around and running the opposite way. Mm-hmm. I mean, that takes a different level of dedication from a defender that is absolutely part of the game. I mean, They don't do that for Jones.
Nobody's doubting Saquon Barkley's
No, but what I'm saying,
and all that. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that these two players are not your normal running quarterback nor your normal running back. And I think that when they're paired together, their talents in that regard are amplified. So if you can bring them both back, if that is financially possible, I think that's a good idea, because forget the money. Like, if money wasn't a problem, would you want both back?
Of course.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Just I think there are people that don't. So whatever. But
this is purely a financial decision for me.
Yeah. I agree. I think you can get a functional, deadly offense utilizing a different running back on a much cheaper scale, possibly even a drafted rookie scale, which is really cheap. I don't think you can get similar. Like, I think you can get something that will work, but I don't think you can. I do think that Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, these guys are very rare talents. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I guess, perhaps his injury history or just Giants fans' overexposure to him, that is maybe being downplayed. I don't know if you feel that way, but I think the insane stuff that Barkley can do is being not talked about as much. But
let me ask you a question. You said if it's a question between Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, you'd pick Daniel Jones.
Every time.
What if the question is between, for cap money, Leonard Williams or Saquon Barkley? Saying you'd have to cut Leonard Williams or keep Saquon Barkley.
I would probably cut Leonard Williams.
Interesting.
We'll get to him in shortly, but to me, Leonard Williams is a very good defensive tackle, but also it doesn't seem as hard to me to obtain beastly defensive tackles. There aren't a ton of them, but it does seem like they come out every other year in the draft. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to me, I think he's more easily replaceable. I think that's a spot that you're probably already worried about what you're doing with him this year. And if not this year, I think his contract is over next year. So you're probably already addressing him potentially this year anyway.
But I feel, though, like defensive tackle, a good defensive tackle, you're probably going to have to draft higher for one, where running back, you can go a little deeper in the draft and get somebody.
Well, that's absolutely true. But right. I think you can get
it becomes one of your higher priorities in the draft, defensive tackle, if you get
100%. But like I said, I mean, you picked it, so I'm rolling with it. But defensive tackle is something they're probably looking at this year anyway. They have to be worried about what happens with Leonard Williams. And Leonard Williams, I already mentioned, as a possible cap casualty to begin with. So that means that they're on notice with him. So they're probably looking at first, second, third round for that this year or next year anyway. So if you get to keep Saquon Barkley and your worst punishment is that you have to push that need up 1 year, I don't think that's the worst. But again, we're talking in these generalities and hypotheticals, like round, pick number.
Yeah.
Then the draft comes down to players, right? I don't have my defensive tackle master list with grades and post-combine stats. So that whole conversation is hypothetical anyway. But I think my point here is pretty much like, I would like to have them both back. It's not financially reasonable. It's not likely to expect. And if I had to choose, it's Barkley walks, Jones stays. And I think that's how it's going to go anyway.
I think that's going to happen too. And I think there's going to be I think there'll be more outcry from the fan base if Barkley walks and Jones walks. But I think in the long run, this team is better off if Jones stays.
I agree. Tight ends?
I've been on a tight end fetish.
I know, that's why I wanted to let you hit it. Let me just give you a quick rundown of the tight end situation. Is Daniel Bellinger is our guy. Myrick and Miller were re-signed. Cager and Hudson are free agents. So it's kind of Bellinger and who right now.
Yeah, and none of those guys remind me of George Kittle or remind me of a guy who is a complete mismatch, in the open field over the middle or anything. So, Bellinger's nice, but that doesn't prevent me from trying to go out if I could and get, an all-world tight end or something. You know, you know more than me how that would fit into the offense and what they're trying to do. But I don't know. Just watching these playoffs, I'm just like, God damn, I wish I had a guy like that on this team. It just seems like so many things are opened up in the offense, makes everything else better. Having a really, really good tight end, and I don't think Bellinger's that guy right now, or will ever be.
Well, okay, so we'll take both of these positions together, the tight end and wide receiver. But to your point, Bellinger is really nice because he's a very good all-around tight end. He does everything pretty well. Nothing spectacular, but he's a pretty good blocker, a pretty good mover. He's pretty good in the open space. He's got pretty good hands, and he runs pretty good routes.
He's nice.
Everything is pretty good, which means you can complement him with whatever's available to you. Which means you can go out there and you can get yourself the heavy blocker guy that's kind of the second talent is pass catching, and you let Daniel Bellinger take more of the pass catching reps, or you can get the receiver type and let Daniel Bellinger do more of the blocking reps. That's kind of nice. I like that. The other position is wide receiver. So, I mean, the question here is, who is our X wide receiver, right? Who's your, for a less schematic term, who's your number one wide receiver? Who is the slot receiver? Who's the depth? Right now, they have Wan'Dale Robinson, who's recovering from a ACL, Colin Johnson, Kenny Golladay, who's more than likely gone, and then Mickens, Pimpleton, Polk, Hodgins, and Sills. So I think Hodgins is probably your Z receiver right now. He's going to be, for lack of a better term, your number 3. Robinson's probably your number 2, but I don't really know what to expect from anybody post ACL, especially a shifty guy like that. I think you have a ton of questions here. You had asked me over the weekend via text, would you rather have a George Kittle or an AJ Brown? I would rather have the tight end, and I gave you a myriad of reasons going back, mostly that I think it's harder I think there are less guys in the league that can defend dynamic tight ends than there are that can defend number one wide receivers. I mean, lots of teams have a really good corner. Plus, there's tons of things you can do schematically to take a number one wide receiver out of a game and force quarterbacks to throw elsewhere. Whereas with tight ends, it just doesn't work as well that way. And there's a lot more you can do with like motion and lining them up. And the looks are so goddamn multiple. I mean, to me, it's not even close. That being said, both of these positions need shit badly, right?
Yeah.
I think the Giants are in a position where if a George Kittle type tight end is there, they could take him and be less aggressive about wide receiver. And if there is a Randy Moss style wide receiver there, they can take that and they can be less aggressive with what they do at tight end. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like there's just there's different directions they can go. I'm not even thinking about draft. I mean, I think one of the things I also texted you over the weekend was, do you see them making that potential AJ Brown type of trade to get that guy out there, we may not think is even available at this moment?
Well, I mean,
that possibly happening.
Absolutely, and here's why. The only thing I have to compare Joe Shane to do historically is last year's draft and what Brandon Beane did in Buffalo, which is to say trade for Stephon Diggs.
Right.
So yeah, I could see that. Which means also going back to Barkley is I could see them spending a day 2 pick on a running back. They did that 3 out of 4 years. So
because even if you sign Barkley again, he's not the most durable fellow in the world, and if you want to have, a competent backup who can hold, carry this team for, a snap or a drive or a game or a month. I mean, just because he signed doesn't mean he's going to be playing every single down going forward for the next 3-4 years.
Sliding back to wide receiver for just a second. All I'm going to say is the fact that the Giants spent a second-round pick on Wan'Dale Robinson last year does not, in my opinion, preclude them from taking another slot receiver in this draft.
They did the same thing this year. They had one in Kadarius Toney. Now, whether they already had their decision made about Kadarius Toney, they were going to move him as soon as they can. So. Okay, so then if they didn't think that, then that having Kadarius Toney, who we can all say, health issues aside, and alleged mental issues, attitude, it just is more talented. Wan'Dale Robinson. They still drafted Wan'Dale Robinson.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah. I know the question is often asked to me as I gush over Nathaniel Dell out of Houston because he's only 5'8". Do we really need another shifty small slot receiver? Yes, actually we do, because we only have one and he's recovering from an ACL injury.
Yeah, if you want to say that Kadarius Toney was never available, right now Wan'Dale Robinson has to prove he can stay on the field, in my opinion, as well, to be consistent. So you don't know. A major surgery.
I wasn't even worried about ACLs with him. I was worried about him just because he's small and slight. Mm-hmm. And I was just worried about him taking serious hits. And
also, look at a team like Kansas City. They have, a few little small shifty guys. And having multiple weapons makes your offense dynamic, unpredictable, lots of options.
Deep.
Those are good things.
Normal shit, get depth. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever.
Jeff, we haven't heard that word around here since we've been doing this show, I think.
We are running a little long, so I'm gonna kind of rifle through some stuff. Do you want to do that, or do you want to do a separate episode for the defense?
Let's do a separate episode.
I want to give the defense its due conversation. So we'll end with the O-line here. We're actually set at tackle, in my opinion. I want to know your opinion, but the question here is, are we set, and is Matt Parrott, Tyree Phillips depth enough? Because right now, Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, Matt Parrott, Tyree Phillips, those guys are all signed. Devery Hamilton and Corey Cunningham were re-signed. I think that's all of those guys back there. I think that's good enough. I got to be honest. In a year where you have to improve so many positions, I think you've got enough depth there.
That you just hit the qualifier at the end that may be what I was going to say. I think if this was a year where we just, we need to make some moves around the margins, yeah, maybe you upgrade the depth, for tackle. But for right now, I think there's other bigger fish to fry right now than who's your backup tackle. I think we're good. And I'm also, bringing this back to front, I am not concerned about Evan Neal. I know a lot of people were concerned, were disappointed. We're like, this guy is a bust. He's horrible pick. Just guy's a rookie. Tackles who are thrown into the fire more often than not struggle their first year. Let's see, a whole offseason. Again, same coaching staff back, full offseason program, OTAs, training camp, preseason, another season. I think you'll feel a lot better about Evan Neal. It's a guy that, 10 months ago we were like, oh God, if we only could get him, that'd be fantastic. So I'm not ready to give up on him just yet. He's our starting right tackle going forward. I don't expect him to play like he did in 2022 going forward.
And I also think that Matt Parrott looked a little bit better last year under Bobby Johnson. Maybe it also just had to do with a different system aside from coaching. I mean, not for nothing, but Matt Parrott, I have made fun of. I've been not nice to him on this show. The dude's had kind of a weird career, right? I mean, he gets drafted out of UConn, goes to the pros
as a project.
Yeah,
remember that.
Yeah,
that's the first thing we said. This guy's a project who was thrown into the fire immediately.
His first coach is Mark Colombo, who gets into an argument with the head coach mid-year and fired. Then he gets a new with Googe is your new coach now, and then that whole staff goes out. When you have Rob Sale then. And then that whole entire coaching staff goes out. Now you have, there's a lot. Plus, he's got an ACL injury that happened in there.
Sure.
It's a weird thing. And he looked a little bit better last year. And not for nothing, I think Tyree Phillips is pretty decent depth.
And how old is he?
Oh, he's young. He's 25.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking about a 31-year-old or something. But all this, treading the tires. Let's, for what we need, I'm giving him a little more leeway to see what he can do.
And I think that Devery Hamilton, I know he's a tackle, I think, by trade. To me, he looked better at guard with this staff moving him around. In fact, he looked downright awful at one point. And I think Corey Cunningham is not bad either. We've seen him over the years. I think he looks good when he's a jumbo tight end out there. That is like really his game day rep. But in preseason stuff where he's played tackle, he's looked good. Moving to interior O-line. Right now, under contract, we have Josh Azudu, Mark Lewinsky, Ben Bredesen, Shane Lemieux, Marcus McKeithen, Wyatt Davis, Solomon Kindley, and Jack Anderson. Nick Gates, John Feliciano, those guys are free agents. My big question is, do we have starters at guard or just depth? And who's playing center?
Feels like we have a lot of depth pieces, but I don't feel like we have really many starters.
I think that you can get by with Ben Bredesen and Josh Azudu. I think that those guys will be. We saw the improvement from Bredesen. He was pretty passable last year. I mean, he looked fine. Josh Azudu is a guy who's raw. He's coming back from injury, but he looked a lot better than I thought too. And in fact, when they were running behind him, they were doing really, really well. Mm-hmm. You have Andrew Thomas on the left side. That certainly helps. Evan Neal is a great run blocker to the right. My big problem is Glowinski is not very good. He had a bad year. We're paying him a lot of money. I need that right guard position solidified.
And I feel like we've been saying that for years.
I know. And I know they drafted Marcus McKeithen to kind of do that. He's got an ACL injury in preseason, man. He was already not that good as far as I was concerned from what I saw at UNC. I'm not really counting on him coming back from ACL surgery and winning the right guard spot, Mark Lewinsky or otherwise. And I think a lot of the guard issues can be masked if perhaps they address the center issue by getting a really good center. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's going to be draft targeting or free agent targeting, but I've always maintained that I think the best way to build your offensive line is to get two really good tackles and a really good center, and the guards can be kind of whatever.
Agreed. And we are 2/3 of the way there. We think we have our two tackles of the present and the future. Let's get that center, and then things will kind of fall in line from there.
Yeah. We know how important quarterback is. We spent a lot of time talking about running back. We keep saying wide receiver and tight end. That's super important. One of those got to get addressed. How important is the interior O-line spot for you?
It doesn't really matter who your quarterback or your running back, your wide receivers or tight end is if they have no time to do anything. And it starts with not being able to run the ball. And if you can't do any of those things, it's all moot. So it's very important.
Yeah, I would say that center, I don't know. I would, at this time today, say that I am looking at center in the earlier section of the draft than I'm looking at wide receiver. And I mean that because I think you can do a lot with this offense with okay wide receivers, but you ain't doing nothing without a really good center. Yeah. That's just the way I'm looking at it right now today.
Well, my hunch is I think, my guess is we're probably going to be targeting wide receiver probably very close to first, and then maybe center, maybe the second need coming out of it. And again, I think that's just, how many centers come out in the first round?
Not very many, no.
Right. So it's one of those, what are you drafting for value for the round and for the pick also?
Right. So I guess we'll have another episode on the defense.
Ooh.
And how they will address that in the offseason. We have some interesting questions there, though I guess not nearly as interesting as Jones and Barkley, right? Oh, well.
Well, I mean, interesting in different ways. I mean, we're excited.
We'll do it topless.
But I mean, we're excited with Wink Martindale. We're excited for this style he has, but there are things that need to be addressed with this defense. And so it's not splashy conversation like quarterback and wide receiver and running back, but a lot of things to address and a lot of things to dig deeper into.
And so we're going to do that next, and then we will dive into our position breakdowns and the possible offseason acquisitions, which means some draft. It also means some free agency. And it's a real fun time. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that's all coming up. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan. Be sure to like, subscribe, give 5-star rating, etc. to the show, and continue listening, of course, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, etc., and of course on YouTube.
Yeah, we're only a handful away from 400 subscribers, which is pretty amazing that everybody takes the time to subscribe and actually look at our ugly mug. So we thank all of you guys. But the best way for this show to grow is for you guys out there to tell your fellow Giant fans and friends to subscribe, like, watch the show, make fun of us all you want, make funny comments, do all the things you want to do. But we'd really appreciate it. So thank you in advance for following us and being our Giant friends.
Yeah, I know, like, 5-star reviews like do a lot for the show, and liking it does a lot for the show. But I honestly care less about that than I do about people just literally telling your other Giants fans friends, just like, yo, there's this show. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's the harder thing to do, is to, like, you know, go out of your way to tell somebody something like that. And I think it makes more of an impact as well with directly telling people to check something out.
Sure.
You know, I know all the algorithm stuff helps a lot, but like I care more about that stuff. So I think that's awesome.
I want the money, so give me some likes and subscriptions.
There you go. All right, guys, we will see you next time. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.